The Inheritance Games by Jennifer Lynn Barnes, a First Chapter Friday read aloud video with the Word Nerd. Today, as you listen, watch for the story quote that will appear on screen. Write it down word by word and then follow the instructions given to you by your teacher. Stay all the way to the end to see if you've written it down correctly. All month long, I'm going to be focusing on books that have the word game in the title. The Hunger Games, The Inheritance Games, The Weston Game, Ender's Game, and Change the Game. One last thing before we get to Chapter 1, I want to give a shout out to Mrs. Mastrogiacomo's 7th graders at Mashpee Middle and High School. So glad you're here for this First Chapter Friday video. Hey, my name's Amanda Zieba. Welcome to my channel, Learning with the Word Nerd, and another First Chapter Friday video. This week I'm going to be reading to you from The Inheritance Games by Jennifer Lynn Barnes. This book is a mystery, and it is the first book in a series of, I think, 4. The 4th one should be coming out pretty soon. Follow the author on Instagram, and she's been sharing the furious writing frenzy she's been in to get that last book done. So waiting with great anticipation for that one. As I was reading this first book in the series, I kept thinking it was so much like the Weston Game, just like a little bit of a modern spin on it. So I'm going to read the back and see if you agree and you can draw those connections, and then we will read Chapter 1. Avery Grambs has a plan for a better future. Survive high school, win a scholarship, and get out. But her luck changes in an instant when billionaire Tobias Hawthorne dies and leaves her virtually his entire fortune. The only catch? Avery must move into his sprawling mansion full of secret passages, riddles, and codes. Unfortunately for Avery, Hawthorne House is also occupied by the family that was just disinherited. This includes the 4 Hawthorne grandsons, dangerous, magnetic boys who grew up with every expectation that one day they would be the ones to inherit billions. Heir apparent Grayson is convinced that Avery is a conwoman, and he's determined to take her down. But his brother Jameson views her as their grandfather's last hurrah, a twisted riddle, puzzle to be solved. Caught in a world of wealth and privilege with danger around every turn, Avery will have to play the game herself, just to survive. I loved this book. It kept me guessing at all times, wondering what I would do if I were Avery and stuck in this situation. And I know it's going to suck you in. The chapters are super short. Sometimes I like super short chapters because I think, oh, I can just read one more. Oh, I can just read one more. And then like 5 chapters later, I'm still reading. But as promised, we're just going to read Chapter 1, The Inheritance Games by Jennifer Lynn Barnes. When I was a kid, my mom constantly invented games. The quiet game. The who can make their cookie last longer game. A perennial favorite, the marshmallow game, involved eating marshmallows while wearing puffy Goodwill jackets indoors to avoid turning on the heat. The flashlight game was what we played when the electricity went out. We never walked anywhere, we raced. The floor was nearly always lava. The primary purpose of pillows was for building forts. Our longest lasting game was called I Have a Secret, because my mom said that everyone should always have at least one. Some days she guessed mine. Some days she didn't. We played every week right up until I was 15, and one of her secrets landed her in the hospital. The next thing I knew, she was gone. Your move, princess. A gravelly voice dragged me back to the present. I don't have all day. Not a princess, I retorted, sliding one of my knights into place. Your move, old man. Harry scowled at me. I didn't know how old he really was, and I had no idea how he'd come to be homeless and living in the park where we played chess each morning. I did know that he was a formidable opponent. You, he grumbled, eyeing the board, are a horrible person. 3 moves later, I had him. Checkmate. You know what that means, Harry. He gave me a dirty look. I have to let you buy me breakfast. Those were the terms of our long-standing bet. When I won, he couldn't turn down a free meal. To my credit, I only gloated a little. It's good to be queen. I made it to school on time, but barely. I had a habit of cutting things close. I walked the same tightrope with my grades. How little effort could I put in and still get an A? I wasn't lazy. I was practical. Picking up an extra shift was worth trading a 98 for a 92. I was in the middle of drafting an English paper in Spanish class when I was called to the office. Girls like me, we were supposed to be invisible. We didn't get summoned for sit-downs with the principal. We made exactly as much trouble as we could afford to make, which in my case was none. Avery, Principal Altman's greeting was not what one would call warm. Have a seat. I sat. He folded his hands on the desk between us. I assume you know why we're here? Unless this was about the weekly poker game I'd been running in the parking lot to finance Harry's breakfasts, and sometimes my own. I had no idea what I'd done to draw the administration's attention. Sorry, I said, trying to sound sufficiently meek, but I don't. Principal Altman let me sit with my response for a moment, then presented me with a stapled packet of paper. This is the physics test you took yesterday. Okay, I said. That wasn't the response he was looking for, but it was all I had. For once, I'd actually studied. I couldn't imagine I'd done badly enough for an intervention. Mr. Yates graded the test, Avery. Yours was the only perfect score. Great, I said in a deliberate effort to keep myself from saying, okay, again. Not great, young lady. Mr. Yates intentionally creates exams that challenge the abilities of his students. In 20 years, he's never given a perfect test score. Do you see the problem? I couldn't quite bite back my instinctive reply. A teacher who designs tests most of his students can't pass? Mr. Altman narrowed his eyes. You're a good student, Avery. Quite good, given your circumstances, but you don't exactly have a history of setting the curve. That was fair. So why did I feel like he'd gut punch me? I'm not without sympathy for your situation, Principal Altman continued, but I need you to be straight with me here. He locked his eyes into mine. Were you aware that Mr. Yates keeps copies of all his exams on the cloud? He'd thought I'd cheated. He was sitting there staring me down, and I'd never felt less seen. I'd like to help you, Avery. You've done extremely well, given the hand of life has dealt you. I would hate to see any plans you might have for the future derailed. Any plans I might have? I repeated. If I'd had a different last name, if I'd had a dad who was a dentist and a mom who stayed home, he wouldn't have acted like the future was something I might have thought about. I'm a junior, I gritted out. I'll graduate next year with at least 2 semesters worth of college credits. My test score should put me in scholarship contention at UConn, which is one of the top actuarial science programs in the country. Mr. Altman frowned. Actuarial science? Statistical risk assessment. It was the closest I could come to double majoring in poker and math. Besides, it was one of the most employable majors on the planet. Are you a fan of calculated risks, Ms. Grambs? Like cheating, I thought. I couldn't let myself get angrier. Instead, I pictured myself playing chess. I marked out the moves in my mind. Girls like me didn't get to explode. I didn't cheat, I said calmly. I studied. I'd scraped together time in other classes between shifts later at night than I should have stayed up, knowing that Mr. Yates was infamous for giving impossible tests, and it had made me want to redefine possible. For once, instead of seeing how close I could cut it, I'd wanted to see how far I could go. And this is what I got for my efforts, because girls like me didn't ace impossible exams. Take the test again, I said, trying not to sound furious or worse, wounded. I'll get the same grade again. And what would you say if I told you that Mr. Yates had prepared a new exam, all new questions, every bit as difficult as the first? I didn't even hesitate. I'll take it. That can be arranged tomorrow during 3rd period, but I have to warn you that this will go significantly better for you now. Mr. Altman stared at me. Excuse me? Forget sounding meek, forget being invisible. I want to take the new exam right here in your office, right now. Now it's the next time that Avery gets called into the principal's office where things really start to get interesting. If you want to know what happens in the inheritance games, pick up a copy from your school library, your local indie bookstore, or your the link that I left for you in this description box. Thanks for coming, and I'll see you again next time for another First Chapter Friday video. To continue reading The Inheritance Games by Jennifer Lynn Barnes, pick up a copy from your school library, purchase one from a local indie bookstore, or grab it via the link in the description box. Remember, this is the first book in a series of 4, so there's more waiting for you when you're ready. Also, there's more First Chapter Friday videos on my channel. Just check out the playlist. This week's mystery manuscript quote says, "Everything's a game. The only thing we get to decide in this life is if we play to win." Thanks so much for stopping by my channel, Learning with the Word Nerd. I hope I'll see you again for another First Chapter Friday video. Be sure to check out these other places online for more great content. See you again next time, and happy reading.